Hello, everybody out there in radio land. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. As always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 WIDR or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may turn out to be. If you're a new listener, Media Cyphers, a weekly program here on the wider airwaves where we tell you what is really going on as far as the news goes, everything going on from here in Kalamazoo, the state of Michigan, the so-called United States, and the rest of the world from a working class perspective. And as it says in the name, really taking a critical lens to mainstream corporate media. So we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff on today's program, as we always do. We're going to be around 12:30. We're going to be playing a interview that I did with a couple of organizers from Indivisible on the big national rallies that happened across the country over the weekend. Me and my co-host Lawrence are also going to be breaking down some important issues that kind of fell underneath the headlines later on in the program, as well as some of our thoughts on Cory Booker's filibuster. I did want to start the show talking about, I want to shout out a really important event that's going on tonight here on campus. That is Tuesday, April 8th, from 5 to 8 p.m. over at Sangren Hall, room 1740. The WMU chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine is going to be hosting a talk, Pro-Palestine Beyond the Headlines, an evening of powerful discussion and organizing featuring special guest speakers Layla Al-Abed and Lexis Zaidan, leaders of the National Uncommitted Movement and fierce advocates for Palestinian liberation. I'm going to go ahead here and read the event summary. As the U.S. government continues to fund Israel's genocide in Gaza while cracking down on student activists, we must cut through the mainstream narratives and expose the truth. This event will explore the realities of Palestine beyond the headlines, the impact of student-led organizing, and what we can do to mobilize for action. Lexis Zaidan is a Palestinian American human rights activist, educator, and community leader from Dearborn, Michigan. She is co founder of Detroit Kids Matter and the managing director of strategic initiatives at Teach for America Detroit, advocating for educational equity and access. Lexis played a pivotal role in the Uncommitted National Movement, a historic grassroots campaign that mobilized nearly 750,000 uncommitted votes in protest of U.S. support for Israel's genocide in Gaza, securing 36 delegates for the Democratic National Convention. She continues to use her platform to uplift Palestinian liberation, social justice, and grassroots activism. Layla El-Abed is a Palestinian American organizer and campaign manager for Listen to Michigan, the Michigan-based effort that ignited the National Uncommitted Movement. A longtime advocate for environmental justice, equitable housing, and voting rights, Layla organizes across Southeast Michigan to empower Black, Indigenous, people of color communities and mobilize collective action. As a daughter of Palestinian immigrants and the mother of three, she is deeply committed to intersectional justice and the fight for liberation, along with her sister, Representative Rashida Tlaib. Under her leadership, Listen to Michigan secured over 104,000 uncommitted votes in the state's Democratic primary, sending a clear message of resistance against U.S. complicity in genocide. Join us for an evening of powerful dialogue, organizing, and solidarity with Lexis Zaidan and Layla Al-Abed as they share their insights on movement building, political power, and the fight for Palestinian liberation. So again, that's going to be tonight over at Sangren Hall, room 1740. They recommend folks park in lot 41 if you're driving. That's going to be from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. tonight. Again, you can find more information on the Know Your Humanity page and from the WMU chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine. So, we wanted to shout out that big event going on tonight here on campus. And I also wanted to talk about one of the things that me and Lawrence didn't really hit on. In basically, my apologies again for not coming in last week. I became pretty ill after my COVID booster, and I'm sure a lot of the conspiracy folks will have a lot to say about that. But it basically just had like a 24-hour fever. Couldn't really come in here and call out the BS as I normally do. Still, we've got like about 2 weeks of news to catch up on. And of course, probably the biggest story from last week, everybody's talking about the terrifying ramifications, sorry, that's corny, of what the Trump administration has done as far as tariffs go. And I'm sure a lot of you out there have already heard a lot of different takes on this. So I just kind of wanted to focus on a couple of things that maybe were less discussed about the the tariff fiasco, as it were. Um, One of the things that I do want to bring up is, you know, there's been some kind of back and forth discussion from, Sean Fain, no less, who is the leader of the United Auto Workers, one of the biggest industrial unions in the country, who is basically giving Donald Trump a pat on the back for these tariffs. To quote Sean Fain, he went on to say, "We've seen over 90,000 manufacturing facilities leave the United States. We've seen the big three alone in the last 20 plus years. 65 plants have closed. Um, Tariffs aren't the total solution, but tariffs are a tool in the toolbox to get these companies to do the right thing. And the intent behind it is to bring jobs back here and, invest in American workers. If they're going to bring jobs back here, they need to be life-sustaining jobs where people can make a good wage, a living wage, have adequate health care, and have retirement security, and not have to work 7 days a week or multiple jobs just to scrape to get by paycheck to paycheck." So this line of argument, which it in a vacuum, that is true. Tariffs can be a method to try to bring manufacturing back to the United States. And some people have even argued it's like, well, what if we saw like say, and you mostly get these arguments from like kind of the center right libertarian types. Well, if Bernie Sanders was president, he wanted to do the same thing. I'm sure I wouldn't hear you complain about it, you socialist, etc. Um, Here's the thing: context is key in everything, and the question needs to be asked like, okay, so what are the tariffs? How are the tariffs being implemented? Who is implementing the tariffs? And these are all key, very key, important questions. And particularly, it's really disappointing to hear this. Sean Fain's like, we applaud the Trump administration for stepping up to end the free trade disaster that has devastated the working class communities for decades. And the main problem with that is, look, you have to have been born pretty maybe yesterday to think the Trump administration really cares that much about American workers. And I know perhaps the calculus with Sean Fain and particularly Sean O'Brien is the idea if they kind of suck up to this hyper capitalist government, they can etch out some sort of kind of right-wing alliance with some of these conservative politicians. And at least rhetorically, a lot of these conservative politicians, J.D. Vance comes to mind, are trying to build these rhetorical bridges with the working class, the white working class mostly. Um, and it's important to understand that, sometimes unions have made this approach in the past. You kind of try to play political parties against each other and, take them at face value for what they're saying. But I don't really think this historical moment calls for that. I think it calls for, kind of telling it like it is, which is to say, Donald Trump's kind of attempt to wrap this in up as preserving, bringing jobs back and strengthening the working class. They're really like a fig leaf to what Trump is actually trying to do with these tariffs, which again, while he may be in some weird way sincere about trying to he's also done it in the most inept way possible. They literally fed data into Chat GPT in order to figure out what level of tariffs to enact on different countries, which led to some absurd circumstances like putting tariffs on a country populated entirely by penguins. And so, there's that part. The one that his administration is just completely incompetent in the execution of these tariffs. Also, when you couple it with their assault on organized labor, keep in mind one of the first things that Trump, in his administration is trying to do is try to deunionize the federal workforce, try to break the federal unions, and also trying to appointing people to the Department of Labor who are going to make it more difficult for unions to organize. So, knowing that as the character of the administration in charge and what their priorities are, to be sycophantic and to give the administration the benefit of the doubt that they're trying to bring manufacturing back here, it makes people like Sean Fain look incredibly naive. And also like he's, really breaking up. Again, this is the man who talked about trying to coordinate a general strike in 2028, which Godspeed to that, but it might be the only real big tactic left that can kind of pull workers in this country back from the brink of this sort of, techno feudalism we're on the cusp of. But to basically throw a bunch of your other unionized workers under the bus by, offering the Trump administration, a pat on the back or a pat on the head for rhetorically trying to bring jobs back, while of course enacting the most inept tariff plan of all time, which, if any of you have been paying attention to the stock market, has had some dire consequences. Now it's easy for me as a poor millennial to be like, "LOL, line go down," but for any of us, any of you listening who are maybe more in the middle class or certainly older, this is having a tangible effect on people's retirement savings, their 401ks. It is basically just they are strapped to Trump's stupid tariff planning. Um, it basically tied to it, and it is plummeting, plummeting, plummeting down. Even to the point where a lot of the Orange One's own supporters are going on Twitter and crying foul and saying, "I can't believe this is happening. I can't, again, the leopards are eating my face. I can't believe it. If only somebody had warned them." And I mean our show, not Kamala Harris. But anyway, um, the overall point of this is don't get caught in this rhetoric of like, oh, maybe a broken clock is right twice a day on this whole tariffs thing, because you got to understand again, why is the president doing these tariffs? Who is he? What is he actually about? And Trump basically is a represent. It is the neoliberal in game combined with sort of fascist authoritarian politics. And what is he's doing is he's trying to strip the administrative state of the copper wiring out of its walls, while again leading a overt assault on organized labor. I cannot emphasize that enough. Everything the Trump administration has done since they got in is to try to cripple organized labor and make it harder and more difficult to organize. And if you are a leader in organized labor, like Sean Fain, you are being taken for a ride, and it is going to make it all the more difficult for the working class to unify in this very short time that we have to come, while we still can, to have that big Project 2028 general strike where we're going to try to get what we deserve. If you are throwing federal unions under the bus right now, if you are ignoring retirees who just saw all of their 401ks go plunge into the toilet, because this could hypothetically help the auto industry. And, spoiler alert, this is probably going to lead to layoffs more than it's going to lead to any sort of ramping up of domestic production. Then yes, it's again just kind of selling us all out down, selling out the rest of the working class down the river. Also cannot be emphasized enough, and as part of the ineptitude. Now, the idea in a vacuum of bringing back domestic production to the United States, the so-called United States, is not a bad idea. It's sound in many ways. Ecologically, it's better to have a supply chain that is not global. That's true. But again, it is back to how inept and how stupid. Again, the Trump administration, I guess, thinks that we can just manifest a global supply chain in the span of just a couple of months. That's why, like, even if you do engage in tariffs, you want to do it in a careful, truncated way, for industries that can actually build up to capacity. And that's another thing. This also requires a lot of public investment. The sort of like more socialist or New Deal way of doing tariffs would require, on the same flip of the coin, having tremendous amount of federal investment in jobs programs, building up uh, infrastructure to bring back some of that manufacturing base to the United States. There has been none of that. So the fact that there is none of that to complement these tariffs should clue you in that this is in some way a scam. And a lot of people have kind of theorized that this is basically Trump's way to bully corporations into either, like, getting tariff exemptions, so that they either toe the line on Trump himself, or DEI, or any of the things that's on the laundry list of Project 2025 or Trump's priorities, or again, simply just being a sycophant for him. Again, the guy is a crooked real estate dude. That is how he views governance. And this is how I think, really, I think he's trying to execute these tariffs as a way to basically say, it's like, well, I could give you a tariff exemption, but you got to do something for me. And if there's any sort of wit or intelligence to these tariffs, that's really the bottom line of what it is. Trump does not really care about bringing manufacturing or bringing jobs back to the United States. It's, again, part of a broader scam, and people who are part of organized labor should tread a little bit more uh, intelligently in the future, because engaging in an overtly fascist government in good faith based on their promises is only going to put egg on our face and is going to make it all the more difficult to organize in the future. So with that, I'll link there was a great interview that Democracy Now! Did with Richard Wolff on the tariffs. I will link to that in the show notes. Um, we're going to be switching gears in just a moment. I interviewed a couple of the Indivisible organizers over the weekend about the large protest that happened over the country, right here in Kalamazoo, about approximately between 35 to 4,000 people. 3,500 to 4,000 people were seen waving signs all along down Westnedge. The big national hands-off rally, trying to speak truth to power to the current kleptocratic government. So we're going to be interviewing them in just a moment. I did want to shout out real too. I don't think I'm going to have time to read this on the program, but I did want to mention, when we were absent last week, we were going to cover Trans Day of Remembrance, and there was a very good article, I believe, from our friends at Truth Out. Want to honor Trans Day of Visibility? Fight. Excuse me. Uh, Fight with us like your life hinges on it. Just going to read a very quick excerpt. I'd really recommend everybody check out the full article. But it goes on to say, transgender activist Allison Chapman knows, as a legislative researcher and software engineer, as the US government and those on the far right continue to increase their attacks and targeting of trans people, it's more important than ever that we protect ourselves and the information we have from those who want to do us harm. But even as we work to make sure people have what they need day to day, we can't stop dreaming toward futures where we are all free. I think it is easy for us to fall into our own form of compliance with the Trump regime right now. We have been spending a lot of time talking to trans people about their dreams and what is really worth fighting for. We have been sending love and care to trans people in the form of mutual aid, healthcare, clothing, and personal care. We're also creating a container where trans people can be outraged and express that freely. Above all, let's keep each other alive. I am resting and strategizing because as a community, we are going to be in for a decades-long fight to create a new reality where liberation and liberty is not fickle, Jenkins said. We need you. We need each other. We can and will survive. It's time for us to be here, loud, angry, and doing the work our communities need. That is from Truth Out. Want to honor Trans Day of Visibility? Fight with us like your life hinges on it. That is by Zane McNeil. It's published on Truth Out on March 31st. Keep your dialogue. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. You can also find our program online. That's Media Cyphers on Facebook and YouTube. And you can also find the Media Cyphers podcast on most podcasting apps. Keep your dialogue. We will be right back. This is Media Cyphers, your source for political revolution.